Good morning and welcome to this week's IGTV. Today I'm talking about, is your teen manipulating you? And how do you know? Or are you just suspicious all the time that they're trying to manipulate you and you're trying to plug the dam with all your fingers, but they're slipping out the sides? This is something that I get asked a lot by parents of teens. How do I know when they're manipulating me, and how do I know where to draw the line, or if I'm being too kind? Am I being taken advantage of in my kindness? Or should I just be, have way firmer boundaries and things like that? So let's talk about it, shall we? My name is Allie Payne. I'm a certified life coach, certified relationship systems coach. And I have been doing this. I've been supporting parents of teens and tweens for the last 16 years to help them end painful disconnection, stressful silences, and emotional blow-ups to create relationships based on trust and respect. And I want to talk about this with you today. So come on in. Let's have a little chat. All right, so we're going to talk about manipulation. So first of all, I want to take a big picture view of this, okay? So if you are constantly wondering or worried that your teenager is manipulating or taking advantage of you, regardless of what your teen has or has not done, okay? This is just you and me right now, okay? And this is a concern of yours that you're always wondering, ooh, are they trying to manipulate me? Are they trying to control? Have I given too much? Am I being too kind? I want to say this. You may have grown up in an environment of authoritarian parenting and significant control, where your emotional needs were not heard or validated, and there wasn't space for them because you were parented in a space of fear, and fear requires control. And so your parents, parenting from fear or control, needed to make sure they maintained that sense of control, and making room for your feelings was just messy, and making room for any of your bigger feelings probably triggered a lot of fear in them that maybe they would lose control. So they continued to invalidate or shut you down or not make space to hear them. Okay. If that sounds familiar, it's possible that you may be parenting from that position of fear. You are more worried about what might happen, whether or not it's happening. You are more concerned about losing control than you are about your teenager's feelings. Does that make sense? If you are constantly concerned that your teenager might be manipulating or taking advantage of you, you may be parenting from fear and the fear of losing control. Because this is about you, how you feel, not about making room for your teenager's feelings, okay? All right, so that's point number one. If you are worried that you're making room for your teenager's feelings means that you're being manipulated and you might lose control, that's an issue. That's something for you to work on. What are you actually afraid of? Are you afraid of losing control? Are you afraid of not feeling a sense of influence? What is your fear? I'm curious, what is your fear? The second part of this is, if you're worried about whether your teen is manipulating you or not, making room for your teenager's feelings, all of them, the big, the messy ones, the hard ones, the whole thing. Making room for your teenager's feelings, sorry, now there's a fruit fly in my face. Making room for your teenager's feelings doesn't mean you're going to lose control. You see, listening to your teenager's feelings, validating and empathizing doesn't mean you need to do anything. You don't need to do or change or be. You don't need to do anything. I strongly recommend that you do make room for your teenager's feelings. All of them. And can I just say, if you haven't heard any of my other videos before, it's a hot mess. Teenagers have a highly reactive, emotionally run brain because of the adolescent brain development, where their executive function is not yet fully developed. It won't fully develop until they're 25, but they are developing far more complexity in their overall brain. They're actually growing a whole ton of new gray matter, a whole bunch of new, more complex neural pathways in order to begin adulting. And in that time, their emotions, because they develop the capacity for going from about 16 basic emotions when they're a child to closer to 88 as an adult, those feelings feel very overwhelming and big, and they're real, and it's life-threatening and all of the things. And that doesn't make your teenager dramatic or oversensitive or any of those really derogatory labels that you might have heard when you were a child. It makes your teenager human. And their executive function, their emotional regulation, impulse control, risk analysis, decision-making, kind of things like that. The executive function is becoming also far more complex, but the software for that won't finish developing until they're about 25. So I just wanted to put that in there as well. So making room for your teenager's feelings, I highly recommend it. What does that look like? It looks like empathizing and validating. Now, when you are empathizing and validating your teenager's feelings, I get asked this often too, but if I'm empathizing and validating, aren't I making the problem worse? Because I need to put a wet blanket on all of that emotional mess, because they're just being unrealistic and they're being so over dramatic and oversensitive and they're flying off the handle. Oh my gosh. I don't want to turn the volume up on that. Thank you very much, Allie. I want to put a wet blanket on that and dampen that sucker right now. No, because putting that wet blanket on that is asking your teenager to deny or suppress their feelings, and it is a way where you become emotionally unavailable to what is true for them. Their emotions are true for them. I'm not asking you to agree. So validating and empathizing to make space for your teenager's emotions is step one. And it doesn't mean agreeing, okay? Empathy never means agreement. Not a single time. Empathy does not require agreement. So validating looks like this. Yeah, I can see how angry you are. I can see how upset this is upsetting this is for you. Yeah, that would be so frustrating. So you're making their feelings right. Now, that again, for you, based on how you were raised, may feel like you are giving them permission to feel more of that, which might feel really frightening and scary for you. Like, what the heck if you amplify that mess? It's okay. Would you believe that empathy and validation are the fastest ways to calm and quench that emotion? Listening is balm for the spirit. So when you make space for your teen's emotions, they actually calm faster than you ignoring them or emotionally abandoning them, thinking that's going to calm them down. That will amplify. It's quite counterintuitive, okay? Okay, so validating is making them right about their feelings, because they are, as are you, right about your feelings. Empathy, there are a couple pillars to empathy. So first is perspective taking. Empathy requires you to be willing to take someone else's perspective, even if you don't agree, and even if you have never had a similar situation in your own life. Okay, so not about agreement. Are you willing to momentarily take someone else's perspective? The second part of that is you need to be able to park your own perspective and judgments. So it's non-judgment. You have to be able to park your own perspective, let go of right and wrong, that this is just how this person is experiencing it, and know that by temporarily releasing your own perspective in order to take theirs doesn't put you or your value or worth at risk, okay? So you've got to be non-judgmental. You have to be willing to take someone else's perspective. So here's what it might sound like. Oh my goodness, that must have been so painful for you. I'm sorry that this was so awful, such an awful experience. You know, you deserve to be treated with respect. Or, wow, that must have been really hurtful to hear your friends say that. Like, you are just acknowledging their feelings, but empathy is not about making their perspective wrong. So this is an example of what you might have thought empathy was when you were a child, okay? Which is, well, you're being a little over dramatic. I mean, it probably wasn't that bad. Major invalidation creates emotional unsafety, and that is you are shutting down their feelings. There's another SH word you're probably doing on their feelings, but we don't need to say that here. So it might also sound like, okay, well, I'm sure it wasn't, I'm sure that person would never say that. You might have heard them wrong. So you're constantly invalidating their perspective and their feelings, okay? So making space to validate and empathize with your teenager's feelings does not mean you're giving them the permission to manipulate you. One is not the other, okay? They're literally not related. The only thing that makes them related is your belief that by making space for your teen's emotion, you might lose some control. That's the actual fear under there. Okay. Now, next step here is, so you're making space for their feelings by validating and empathizing. Okay. You still don't need to do anything. You're not doing anything. You're just making space for their feelings. That's it. So when parents say to me, how do I know if my teenager is manipulating you? Well, here's the next part to this. You can only be manipulated if you allow someone to. They can't secretly manipulate you. It's not like a big secret. Here, this whole conversation boils down to boundaries. Boundaries. When you make space for your teenager's emotions or feelings, are you now, and teenagers will use things like guilt and name calling and shaming to try and get you to behave in a way that they want you to. Okay? Of course they will. They are unskilled in these relational terms, and so they're going to go down and dirty because that is what they know works. And it's also what they see a lot of on social media and all of the big people that they look up to. Okay? So yes, they're going to try manipulation, but whether it works or not is up to you. It's not up to them. If you're worried about giving up control or power or setting boundaries, then why are you giving them your power? One might ask, why are you doing that? So your teenager may want you to do something. For instance, help clean their room or clean their room for them or do some of their chores for them, or they're feeling really sick and they're not well and they want your help with something, okay? Here's the line that's up to you to draw. Because boundaries, my friend, start with you. You are responsible for maintaining what feels like love and respect for yourself first, and then can also feel like love and respect for your teenager. So let's say your teenager is sick and they're saying to you, oh, I'm so sick. I feel so awful. I really need help with this. I need help. Please help me with my room. I really need some help with this. You might say, oh my gosh, that's manipulation. No, you're not going to manipulate me. I don't know. Another person might say, oh yeah, I don't mind helping if they're sick. That's not a big deal. It's an individual thing. Only you know. If you were to go then help them with their room, would you feel resentful or respected? That's it. Because if you feel resentful, you have crossed your own boundary. Now, whether or not your teen is manipulating you, I don't know. You would have to ask them. But this is you and me, okay? You're here, I'm here, so let's have this conversation. You are responsible for maintaining what feels like respect to you. So if you feel respected and you feel that is, I can respect you by helping you clean your room when you're sick, and I feel respected and compassionate towards myself, I'm not sacrificing myself, yeah, I might go help you clean your room for sure. That's what a boundary is. A boundary is a line where you stand in respect for your own self, not control. Because contrary to popular belief, boundaries were never intended to control someone. A boundary was not about you with someone else. A boundary is about you with you. Okay? If you feel resentful, ding, 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 that's the red flag. If you feel resentful, you have probably compromised your own boundary. Your teenager hasn't done anything to you because they are not that powerful unless you give them your power. Okay? So here's another example, because this came up last night for me in my private parenting community. One of the parents posted some screenshots of some texts between her and her daughter and was saying, like, this feels like manipulation to me. So I read through the texts, and the texts were, yes, they were manipulation. They were things like, well, I'm really sick, and if you loved me, you just would. Guilt. I do all these other things when you asked me to, and now I just want you to clean my room for me because I'm really sick, and that's your job as a mother. Shame. If you don't help me clean my room by tomorrow, I probably won't feel better, and then I'm going to be even more stressed out. Blame. And then it goes further into name calling. Okay, so shame, blame, guilt, and name calling. Yes, those are the beginning of some manipulation. Now, here's what this mama did. She was trying to be considerate of the fact that her daughter was sick, but this is behavior that's gone on for a while. And so she set a boundary because she is responsible for what she feels as her experience of respect, first and foremost. She is responsible for feeling respected. That's her experience. She's responsible for that. So this is while her daughter is up in her room. So she texted back to her daughter and said, I love you, and I understand that you're sick. I do not feel respected when I'm spoken to in that way. I'm happy to help you to clean your room on another day. Right now, I'm not feeling like those words and phrases, you have to be really specific. Those words and phrases do not feel respectful to me. And so, no, I love you and you're going to be okay. Now, this was specifically around getting some dishes out of the room that this young girl was feeling really anxious about, but was ill. And so this mama held her line and didn't engage with every single text and just said, I love you. I'm not feeling respected. I will not be helping you with this specific thing right now. And just, that's it. She just held her line. And then, here's what ended up happening. Okay. Here's what ended up happening. What she did was give her daughter the language that works for her to ask. So she said, if you'd like to ask me in the future, you could say something like, Mom, I would really appreciate your help doing XYZ. I'm not feeling well, and these things are really kind of adding to my stress. Would that work for you? That is a respectful request for me, daughter, if you would like me to help. Okay. And so daughter was really angry and frustrated. Here's what happened. Later that night, daughter, who was really sick, and really actually was sick, I shouldn't have put that in air quotes, really was sick. Daughter brought the dishes that were stressing her out, brought the dishes out of her room and down to the kitchen. Now she left them on the counter, but she did it herself, huffing and puffing the whole way. I'm so mad at you. And mom said, I'm really proud of you for doing that, even though you're not feeling well. Validation and empathy. But mom didn't change her behavior. So you see, you can empathize and validate with someone, your teenager's emotions, and make space for them, which is really important for creating connection. But you decide whether you change your behavior or not. You decide what you are willing to do and what you're not. And if your teenager is using common unhealthy emotional tools like shame, blame, guilt, and name calling, That's probably an attempt at manipulating you. But let me be really careful about this last point. Your teenager, again, doesn't understand the healthy relational tools to ask for what they want when they really want it. And because they are emotionally reactive and hypersensitive, they're going to use unhealthy tools because that's all they know. So this is the only thing that stops this or even starts it from happening is you understanding that you are responsible for your experience of feeling respected. You are responsible for that. So you need to kindly and compassionately draw that line. When you feel resentful, you don't get to go blame your teenager. You were trying to manipulate me and I won't be manipulated. No. Your teenager doesn't, you're not a puppet. You're not a marionette. Your teenager doesn't hold the controls. You hold the controls, and you may have given them to your teenager, but how is that your teenager's fault? You gave the control to your teenager, so take it back kindly and compassionately. And you say to your teenager, as soon as you feel resentful, because resentful is the red flag of having abandoned yourself, having violated a boundary that perhaps you didn't know was there before, maybe you haven't articulated before. The minute you feel resentful, you go, hang on, this doesn't feel right for me. I think I'm going to do this. This feels respectful for me. And I'm happy to be in perhaps a negotiation with you, because a boundary, this is a quote from Prentice Hemphill, a boundary is the place in which I simultaneously love and respect myself and you at the same time. But let's be really honest, when you are parenting kids, parenting at all, parenting teens, that place where you simultaneously love and respect each other, yourself first, and then them, might be separate sides of the Grand Canyon. And that just might be as close as you can get. Like the Colorado River is running right in between. You can't always be dancing on the head of a pin with unicorns. That's not how boundaries work. Because what feels like respect and love for you may feel like disrespect for someone else, especially if you have previously allowed them to take advantage, to manipulate. Which again, if you're worried about your teen manipulating you, this is a question about you. This isn't about you questioning, are you trying to manipulate me? This has nothing to do with them. Have you abandoned yourself to the degree that you don't know what love and respect feels like? This is what I teach in my programs, and particularly my Become a Boundaries Boss program, which right now you can save 34%. If you're here on Instagram, hit the follow. If you tap the link in my bio, you can go to, it says end the nagging and reminding, and that's valid until Monday. Understanding that boundaries start and end with you, and that other people are going to react the way they're going to react. And you can still be kind and compassionate and make space by empathizing and validating with their feelings without never needing to do anything. So I had another mom message me on Instagram here today about that too. She's like, how do I know if they're manipulating? And I said, well, do you feel resentful? Do you feel taken advantage of? And she's like, I kind of do. And I said, well, sounds like you're allowing, not your teen is manipulating you, you're allowing your teen to manipulate you. So, and then she asked me that exact question. Well, how do I make room for her feelings without being manipulated? I'm like, they're not the same. Making room for the emotions and empathizing and validating is just, that's one thing. You're not doing anything else. You're not like acting. You're just doing that. You can do that all day. What you choose to do then, like help your teen clean their room when they're sick or not, is your behavior that you choose based on what feels respectful, not control, not what feels like being in control, what feels respectful to you. Okay? Now, here is the last thing that I want to say about this. Teenagers will often try to manipulate or control or hook you when they have emotional needs that they are not feeling heard. They don't feel heard. They will attempt to manipulate as a way to, okay, if you're not going to hear my emotions and validate them and try and be here, then I'm just going to override that. I'm going to just see if I can get you to do what I need anyway, because you're not listening to what I need. So I'm just going to try and get you to do what I need. Okay. So with your teenager is you notice, or you're considering that your teenager might be using manipulation as a tool, it might be because they feel unheard. They don't feel like they have their emotional needs being met. Now, I'm not saying that just because they have an emotional need, you need to snap to it and go meet that. That's not what I'm saying. In their experience, if they have emotional needs that are consistently unmet or unheard, they will use manipulation as a tool. Okay? They, as I said before, they will also use it if they don't know another way. So the fastest way through wondering if your teenager is manipulating you or not is to, number one, take a little bit of ownership here. No one can manipulate you unless you give them the keys to your car. So stop giving people your keys to your car. Okay? Take some ownership. You cannot be manipulated unless you allow people to. Okay? So if your teen is using manipulation, they are not bad, they are not evil, they're not the spawn of Satan, they're not going to be like some twisted relationship, or no. They don't know another way, and it is your job, by modeling healthy boundaries about what feels loving and respectful to you and where you can meet someone else as close as possible to what feels loving and respectful to them. That is a boundary. And that you get there via validating and empathizing their emotions. Because the more room you make for their emotions and the more heard they feel, the less likely they are to need to manipulate you. Oh, that's a great question. I took your 5-day challenge. Is this course much different? Yes, the Become a Boundaries Boss is far more detailed in what boundaries are, what they aren't, which I don't totally cover in the 5-day challenge. What boundaries are, what boundaries aren't. And also the exact language around them. Plus you also get my compassionate consequence formula, that's the first question that lots of parents ask me, but what if they don't do it? What if they don't do it? That literally asked that question before I even finish talking about boundaries. People are like, so what if you don't do it? So you get my compassionate consequence formula, which is a flow chart and a worksheet that I wrote based on relationship science. That is the connect before you correct. So that's not my saying, but I wrote it based on that science to help you understand that if your teenager isn't respecting one of your boundaries, first of all, your boundary might be incorrect. Your boundary may be from a position of trying to control them, not trying to maintain respect, starting here first. So that's usually problem number one, is that the boundary isn't actually a boundary. It's trying to increase control for the purpose of compliance by some twisted, horrible view that we were taught that compliance means respect, which it doesn't. And also compliance isn't higher morality, also bullshit that we were raised being thought. So if you're asking, but what if they don't do it? Then what's the consequence? Then your boundaries aren't working. So you got to go back to the beginning and understand how to set effective boundaries. Then you can go to the compassionate consequence formula, which is proven to create lasting behavior change. Because your consequences also aren't working if you are constantly setting the consequences, but you're not seeing any lasting behavior change. You're seeing temporary behavior change, but things go back to the way they were. It's because what you're using is based on attempting to control them to get their behavior to change rather than connect with them so their behavior changes, which is because all behavior, it's top down. All behavior is driven by emotion. So if you don't connect at an emotional level to understand their thinking, to be able to ask necessary questions to find out how they arrived at the thought that they did, that that drove the behavior, you can never truly be the mentor that helps direct, not control, direct their thinking to develop the thought process that requires less consequences in the first place. Does that make sense? So you're not constantly playing whack-a-mole with your teenager. Okay, so that's a great question. Yes, the Become a Boundaries Boss is far more in depth on the ins and outs of boundaries, as well as my compassionate consequence formula, and you get lifetime access to the online, the videos, the audio only, the worksheets, the downloads, and any extra resources. You also get 4 weeks access to my private community, parenting community on Facebook, where I go live twice in that time and I'm answering questions all day. So you get personalized support to take the content and really to apply it to your specific situation so that you get far more value and results faster than if you're just like, great videos, and what does that mean? Then you can ask me the question. So I hope that answers your question for Become a Boundaries Boss. So if you're concerned about your teenager manipulating you, you might have an issue with boundaries. You might. And also your perception of a need for control to avoid manipulation. Control doesn't avoid manipulation. Boundaries avoid manipulation. Boundaries. Awareness of what feels respectful or resentful to you, and not requiring anyone else to change. They can still try and manipulate you, but it's up to you whether they do or not up to them. And then as a parent, you to teach your teenager healthy relationship tools to advocate, self-advocate, to express themselves so they get more of what it is they're looking for, but in a really healthy way and a respectful way. And that is what builds connection and improves communication and lowers conflict. All right, so that's it for this week. If you're here on Instagram, again, please tap the follow. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe. If you're looking for my Become a Boundaries Boss program, if you're here on Instagram, you can tap on my name and then the link in my profile. It'll say end the nagging, reminding, and taking your teen's phone, because that, by the way, never ever works. And if you're on YouTube, I will put the link below. You can also find it on my website, alipayne.com, under programs, and the program is called Become a Boundaries Boss. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope this was helpful. I'd love to hear your comments. And I will see you again next week, Thursdays at 11 a.m. here on Instagram, talking about all things parenting teens. Bye, everybody.